Welcome, brave listeners, to Wilhelm Presents Frightening Tales. I'm your host, Wilhelm. Tune in each week where I entertain my listeners with another dark and creepy tale of the paranormal, donated by authors from around the world. If you are an author of some paranormal fiction and would like to share a story with my listeners, submit one at frighteningtales.com. And while you're there, tune in for more than 40 hours of previous content. Today's episode is written by Jay Davies, an elementary school teacher writing under an alias. He spends fall, winter, and spring wearing ties, scoring spelling tests, and writing notes for disgruntled parents. He spends his summers wearing slippers, scoring cheap records, and writing scary stories for his friends. His work has appeared in Hello Horror, Snakeskin, and The Raven Review. Today's tale is called You Got It. Catherine's gonna do it. She has plenty of convincing reasons: a disapproving father-in-law, a feigned irritation whenever his boss calls past 11 p.m., a built Ford Tough truck, which has yet to run over a sudden environmental concern about having children. To be fair, after a decade of long fights and massive disagreements, it's the accumulation of tiny resentments that sealed the deal. The way he aggressively scrapes burnt toast in the kitchen sink and sluggishly drips toothpaste on the bathroom floor. How he carelessly overstuffs the dishwasher like he's trying to hide evidence from the feds. It's a toothpick tower, a paperclip pillar. At first, she didn't have the stomach for it. Couldn't even look at the paperwork. But ever so slowly, thousands upon thousands of little pieces came together and blocked out the guilt. Jacob just got passed over for a promotion, and she's still not sure where he'll sleep tonight. But Catherine's gonna do it. After dinner, she's asking for a divorce. Jesus! What happened? Jacob, are you okay? Yeah, I cut myself chopping onions. It'll be fine. Jacob dabs his hand with a paper towel. Dozens of quilted daisies disappear in a rush of blood. He swears softly and kicks the storage rack aggressively. Catherine still hears it, over swaying lids and rattling pans. I love you. She's stunned. Some couples say the phrase until it loses all meaning, a series of syllables before bed, a half-hearted telephone sign-off. Catherine's eyes bounce around like wet shoes in a dryer. She combs through every birthday, anniversary, and vacation on file, but soon nods, quietly confirming her pessimistic suspicion. He hasn't said that since our wedding, our first dance. She needs to recalibrate, and she really needs to rethink her opening line. When was the last time you said you loved me? It's not quite as powerful now. She reaches into the medicine cabinet and starts rewriting the introduction. When did you... how could you think... Every important speech needs a memorable opener. Catherine unspools an entire roll of gauze before settling on, why did you even marry me in the first place? She gently closes the cabinet, careful to avoid a reflection in the mirror. Once the door is shut and her uncertainty is out of view, she hears it again, distant, almost muffled, but also undeniable. I love you. I need you to know that I love you. Catherine stammers from the bathroom. I love you too. I mean, In a way, I always will, but Jacob giddily interrupts, a little louder, clearer, more urgent. You're magnificent. You're beautiful. I love you. Sorry, honey, Catherine begins. If there was ever a textbook example of too little, too late. Jacob ignores her rebuttal and continues. Can't you see that I love you? Overdue affections quickly overlap with cries of, What are you talking about, Catherine? And hurry up! When she re-enters the kitchen, Jacob's declared his love nearly 10 times, and he's impatiently asking for bandages, at least 5 more. At this point, Catherine's irritated and slightly flattered. She often pictured her husband as a gobstopper, a series of never-ending layers that might one day soften to reveal something fresh and different at the core. She finally told Jacob about the comparison on her last birthday. He ignored the symbolism and promptly corrected. They're actually called jawbreakers, my dear. And after an unwanted history lesson, they arrived in America in 1901, and a condescending consolation. You'd be surprised at how many people make that mistake, my darling. Catherine walked away from the table and finished her slice of cake alone in the bathroom. That's when her plan first came into view, a bitter proposal to contrast the overly sweet icing. Why wear someone down to uncover devotion? What happened to keeping your heart on your sleeve, falling head over heels, or shooing butterflies from your stomach? Catherine had just turned 41. Finally free of college debt, but still stuck with a man who valued tight lips and sincerely hated idioms. She finished her last bite and decided to divorce him, if things didn't improve by summer. She never imagined that first layer would dissolve on the eve of their separation. Jacob turns away as Catherine grabs his hand. He's right beside her, but it almost sounds like he's in the next room when he suggests a change of scenery. Shall we head upstairs? Catherine blushes, not entirely sure if it's from the unexpected advance or the blood. There's quite a lot on the counter. Jacob doesn't notice the flush of color in her cheeks. A similar shade is gushing from his palm, and he's concentrating on wallpaper geese, too squeamish to oversee the makeshift procedure. Once the gauze is wrapped and the edges are taped, Catherine tightens the lid on the peroxide and clarifies his proposal. Should we do it now or after dinner? Jacob double-checks the bandages, smiling in relief, while curling his eyebrows in confusion. Do what exactly? He asks. Go up to the bedroom. Sure. Now? He turns the oven up to 425 degrees and doesn't wait for an answer. Now works for me. They've spent 10 years arguing through meals and yelling through walls, yet even after they stopped talking at the table, they continued to connect in the bedroom. This should sit for a while anyway. Jacob resets a timer in the kitchen, and within seconds, shirts, pants, and a decorative pillow fly across the bedroom. He kisses her neck with the enthusiasm of a stifled teenager. He struts the line between passion and aggression while pulling her closer. In these moments, Jacob radiates the warmth and earnestness of an eager bellhop in a hotel lobby. His hands glide up her thighs and her nails slide down his spine. God, you're amazing. I'm so lucky to have you. Catherine's dumbfounded. Have they finally forged a physical and emotional bond? Will their marriage pull through? Has another layer dissolved? Jacob has other questions. Have you been working out? Catherine nods and whimpers. She hasn't, but she moans and digs her nails in with the strength of 3 women. In the darkness, sweet and quiet sentiments are punctuated by roaring yelps of pain. "You're simply incredible. What did I do to deserve you?" are followed with howls of "Stop! And what are you doing?" Jacob daintily checks the scratches on his back, slowly tracing the longest gash from his neck to his waist. For a moment, Catherine worries she hurt him, but her apology is quickly interrupted by, "Do you know how much I adore you?" Before she can answer, Jacob's phone rings. That's probably my boss." Without a second of hesitation, he flings her to the edge of the bed like a beetle. "No, it's okay, I'm not busy." As the conversation continues, she feels even more like an insect. Every pitying glance presses her firmer beneath a tissue. He turns away to verify his plans and then peeks back, if only to confirm his wife is crushed. "Looks like you'll have to eat dinner without me again." The heat is gone. He's cold again. The young bellhop flutters back to the roof and hardens into the same old gargoyle. The gobstopper, the jawbreaker, whatever the hell that candy's called, is once again fully formed within its packaging. Apparently our new client wants to compare notes over drinks. Catherine's naked and most of the sheets are dangling off the bed. There's no way to hide her disappointment. "You're really leaving? Now? After you asked me to come up here?" "No, you asked me." "What? Jacob, come on. You..." Catherine shakes off the skepticism. "It doesn't matter." She sits up and rests her head on her knees. "That wasn't your boss." He sidesteps the accusation along with a pile of underwear and slinks into the bathroom. Catherine repeats herself, increasing her volume and her confidence. "Be honest with me, that call wasn't about work, was it?" Jacob turns on the sink. The rushing sound drowns out his wife's suspicions. The man considers himself a conservationist. At least, he does now that Catherine mentions starting a family. In spite of this newfound altruism, he lets the faucet run throughout his entire shave. As the splashing grows louder and the sink overfills, Catherine imagines all the environmental impact articles and all those graphs getting washed away in the wasted water. She tries once more to engage him before getting dressed. "That was not your boss." No response. She's used to the quiet. In a way, it's comforting. It certainly makes more sense than the recent onslaught of affection. If nothing else, the silence confirms her plans. She reaches for her bra and begins. "Why did you ever marry..." "You're right." "What?" Catherine doesn't often hear those words so close together. "What do you mean?" "It wasn't my boss. It was never the boss. And there's this new woman in accounting," and Jacob trails off. He cuts in and out while Catherine catches pieces of his admission. It's muffled and she's not certain. It seems there were dates, dinners, and at least one night on a bright orange shag carpet. Her heart begins to race as Jacob concludes the confession. "I don't care about her anymore. I only love you." Catherine's not sure if it's the proper time to feel validated or horrified, so she alternates between sighing and scowling. After a few more rounds of facial aerobics, she slips on a clean shirt and peers through the bathroom door. Jacob's dabbing his neck with a senseless smirk. "Oh, hey, what's up?" "Who is it?" He stares blankly. A dozen more drips join a puddle at his feet. "It's me?" The woman on the phone. How long have you been seeing her? Seeing who? What woman? He rinses his razor and finally stops the faucet. Must have been in a hurry. His face is an uneven patchwork of red toilet paper and ingrown hairs. A particularly deep cut rests under his left ear. I have no idea what you're talking about, Catherine. You've been acting strange all night. She feels dizzy. Her husband is always trying to spin things around, and she never got used to the sensation. Catherine nearly trips but steadies herself before falling into the shower. I'm not the one who's acting strange. What the hell is going on with you, Jacob? Enough of the finger pointing. Jacob slowly follows his own advice, steadily lowering two frantic hands. Yes, I heard you yelling, but I had the water on, so I couldn't make out what you were saying. You were talking right to me. You admitted it. Admitted what? I've been cleaning myself up. I nicked myself pretty badly while shaving. Jacob points to the fresh slit on his face and shrugs. Second cut of the night. If I'm not more careful, I'll look like a mummy. Catherine's not amused. He has no interest in becoming a father, and she has no interest in his god-awful dad jokes. She sits down on the toilet, once again gathering the strength to accuse her husband of cheating. Whether you heard me before or not, I know you're having an affair. Catherine instantly seems smaller. She marched in with the strength of scorned women, and now she's swinging her legs like a meek child in a barber's chair. I think I've known for a while. Seriously? That's ridiculous. I don't have time for this. I need to put in the work if I'm ever gonna get that promotion. Jacob fixes his shirt collar in the mirror. By the time it's neatly folded and buttoned, it's clear he's done talking. He pushes past Catherine, who's momentarily engulfed in a fog of aftershave and cologne. She can't help but think, he never smells this good when we go out, as he grabs his phone and rushes out the front door. Catherine starts getting dressed, but ultimately plops back down on the bed before buttoning her pants. Her face might be redder than her husband's, it's definitely wetter than the bath mat. She presses a pillow over her head and falls asleep, deciding whether or not to skip dinner. So much for her big plans. Jacob stumbles in around 3 a.m., angrily muttering to himself while pulling a burnt roast from the oven. He slips under the covers with all the grace and chest hair of a woolly mammoth. It's as though she's sharing her bed with a barrel of gin. His breath hits like smelling salts, and Catherine sits up at perfect 90-degree angle. At the very least, she hoped he would take a shower if he didn't have the decency to crash in a motel. Jacob falls asleep with a satisfied grin. Catherine debates if the scent or the snoring is worse, and then berates herself for having a truly ludicrous idea. Okay, that's insane. What am I even thinking? Though, while it might seem preposterous, or possibly even batshit crazy, she can't stop thinking about it. The cut in the kitchen, the scratches on his back, that nick in the bathroom. Catherine slips out of bed, crossing the room in long, delicate strides. There's no need to be sneaky. Jacob doesn't flinch as the driver impatiently hits the horn outside. He doesn't roll over as the closest door creaks. No matter. She stays on her tiptoes while undoing the safety pin from her favorite dress. Once it's unhooked, she quietly slides back into bed. Jacob's almost completely hidden. Even his head is under the sheets. But soon, with a twist and a groan, one arm flutters just above the covers. Catherine holds the safety pin an inch above his skin. Her hands shake, her head swivels, and she's suddenly struck by the absolute absurdity of the idea. Is he a monster? Yes. But did he drain me like a vampire? Yes. But is he a voodoo doll? Catherine laughs and clasps the safety pin shut. Her friends at work will get a real kick out of this story on Monday. She sets the safety pin on her nightstand. A glass of water wobbles and her husband rolls over. What's that? Rebecca? The question hangs between them like a garish chandelier. She can't avoid it now. Once the snoring resumes, the safety pin is back in her hand. There's no hesitation this time. She jams the tip into his arm and waits. Nothing. She does it again, harder, deeper, a bit closer to his elbow. Nothing. Catherine's furious. Furious at her husband for cheating. Furious at herself for waiting 10 years to call a lawyer. Her stomach is empty, and her heart is heavy. She considers going to sleep, putting an end to the lunacy, pressing pause on the pain. For now, anyway. There's sure to be one hell of an uncomfortable conversation over breakfast. Instead, she raises the safety pin and repeatedly drives it into her husband's forearm. More silence. More snoring. More, "Rebecca, come on, what do you want?" After one final desperate jab, Catherine settles onto her back. She quietly questions her sanity. And she hears it. A slow release of air, then faster with more pressure, until it grows into the sound of a dozen tiny tea kettles, whistling at once.
"You're remarkable. So stunning. You're better than her. She's nothing."
It sounds like Jacob, sort of, a bit higher and softer. Perhaps if he were a lovesick member of the Lollipop Guild and not an adulterous member of a bowling team. She can't see his mouth, but like the rest of his limp body, she knows it isn't moving. And yet the talking continues.
"Such a perfect smile. You'll make a wonderful mother."
Catherine decides to relocate to the guest room. It'll definitely be quieter across the hall. This whole situation is surreal. And honestly, a lot to take in at 3:30 in the morning. But Catherine doesn't leave, doesn't even wiggle one foot out from under the covers. She can't help but listen intently to a decade's worth of overlooked compliments and lost endearments.
"You're a goddess."
Every kind sentiment elicits another prick.
"How do you make it look so easy, baby?"
By 7 a.m., her face is glowing and the sheets are caked in blood. She thought about stopping multiple times. At one point, around 5:15, she even returned the safety pin to her dress in the closet. Didn't stay there for long. Its absence reminded her of the water next to the bed. Every night she set it down on that same coaster, and every morning she woke up to a full glass. Just once, she skipped her trip to the kitchen, went right to bed after brushing her teeth. As luck would have it, hours later she awoke with a sore throat, gasping for breath, arms waving above an empty nightstand, confused, thirsty, and longing. And so it was that every time she felt content, every moment she set the pin down, tossed it aside, or walked it across the room, she abruptly needed to hear it more than ever. As usual, the farther away it was, the thirstier she became. And then, a sharp push, a streak of blood, an accolade. I'd marry you all over again. Unorthodox, but efficient. Without a looped string or a frilly pink dress, Jacob still resembles the talking dolls of her youth. Another quick prick and suddenly,
You're the only one for me.
Catherine didn't find a single second of sleep. But she looks rejuvenated, younger than she has in years. Her gray hairs might have walked away with her crow's feet. For the first time in ages, she feels happy and hungry. She decides to channel her enthusiasm into a big breakfast. Eggs and bacon always soften the blow of a bad hangover. Jacob trips down the last 2 stairs as Catherine whisks their last 2 eggs. He's squinting and rubbing his temples, still smelling like a dumpster behind a distillery. For a moment, as he passes the stove to collapse at the table, Catherine imagines the smoke from the bacon is a cartoon stink cloud rising from his back. How are you feeling? She asks. Jacob melts into a chair and moans. Awful. I'm sweaty and I've got a brutal headache and I can't begin to explain this. Jacob flashes his right forearm. He has more tiny red dots than a sex offender map. Catherine resumes her chopping and calmly suggests they change the sheets. You know, Samantha's husband mentioned something about bedbugs the last time I saw him. Jacob's satisfied with that answer. He doesn't appear remotely worried about the pests, and for once Catherine appears to have the upper hand. She sets a mushroom omelette, 3 slices of crispy bacon, and a glass of pulp-free orange juice in front of her husband. His favorite meal. It's not poisoned, is it? Catherine laughs. It's a light, genuine chuckle, and it immediately sets him at ease. Once his shoulders slump and he fully nuzzles into a sense of false security, she begins her long, delayed speech. Why did you even marry me in the first place? Her plan is finally in motion. She feels good, confident. It doesn't last. Seriously? Are we doing this now? Jacob takes another bite and counters. I think a better question is, why did you marry me? Catherine's surprised. That might be an understatement. Her right eye is twitching and her left foot is tapping uncontrollably. She expected pushback, an argument, possibly some pleading, but not this. It hasn't been easy for me either, he says, staring down at his omelet. Do you know? No, don't even, it's my turn, interrupts Catherine. I've heard enough of your damn speeches. Stop, just stop. She says it again, a 3rd time for good measure. He keeps going. My father told me to be careful with you. He said marriage often starts with silk sheets and bouncing bed frames, but over time it can fray and wear out like a lumpy recliner. You remember. I worked at his upholstery shop back that one summer. He was always using furniture to teach me life lessons. Catherine rolls her eyes. Oh, I know, she groans. He said my wedding dress matched the pattern on a discount love seat. Jacob nods and continues. He was trying to scare me. Truth be told, I thought it sounded kinda nice. Something cozy to ease into after a long day at work. Familiar, but easy, safe, and snug. Jacob, I wanted that too. That's all I wanted. Really? He asks. Because I never felt comfortable, not with you. My dad told me to watch out for recliners, but I wound up with a plastic-coated couch in an empty sitting room. You're distant. You're cold. He accidentally spits out a sliver of bacon while rattling off more unflattering objectives. Uninviting, calculating, manipulative. I'm cold? Catherine drags out the first syllable like she's raking it over hot coals, rather heated for someone accused of being icy and lifeless. She's furious all over again, incredulous and irritated. Tired of his dumb comparisons. What red-blooded woman wouldn't want to be called an ugly couch? And truthfully, she's a bit shocked that he pulled off such an eloquent monologue with such a grueling hangover. She needs to commandeer this argument, fast. When was the last time you said you loved me? She asks. Honey, I said it last night. That wasn't you. What are you talking about? Who was it then? There was no one else here, Catherine. Jacob appears confused. But that doesn't stop him from fixing another massive mouthful. A fleet of crumbs parachute into his lap as he clarifies. Okay, I'm listening. That wasn't me. No, it wasn't. Never mind. I mean, it sounded like you, but other than last night, when was the last time you told me? A week ago, at dinner. I think we were at Charlie's. She shakes her head. You haven't said it since our wedding, our first dance, actually. Jacob raises a single eyebrow. She used to think this move was quite cute. Now his uneven face looks as twisted as his version of events. You're crazy. Talk about an exaggeration. That was over 10 years ago. I say it all the time. I whisper, I love you, before bed. I shout it before I leave for work every morning. You mean before you meet Rebecca? Who's Rebecca? And why do you keep saying that wasn't me? Honestly, who was it? Catherine? You're really starting to sound... Don't you say it. Catherine's chopping grows louder, more aggressive. She throws diced tomatoes into her omelet and tosses Jacob a sinister sneer. Don't you dare. He's undeterred. Are you hearing voices, darling? Shut up, she screams. It's not like that. It sounds like that, and you know what else? You're starting to sound like your mother. Catherine grips the knife tighter. The room is spinning. He did it again. He must be terrific at origami because he's always shaping and bending situations to fit his will. My mother was abused. She was stuck in a loveless marriage. Your mother was insane. She took your father's breath away when he walked into a room. Jacob gasps. Beautiful mother? Beautiful daughter. She pulls the knife out, blushing as all the color leaves her husband's face. Catherine? Kath, listen to me. When was the last time you said you loved me? Jacob's down on the tiled floor. He's pressed up against a shelf, streaking blood across their cereal cabinet. 10 years ago. Sure, fine. You're right, whatever. It's been 10 long years. I'm so sorry. I should have been better to you, more open, more loving. I haven't said it since our first dance. And what song did we choose? I can't remember, dear. I just remember it was perfect. Nice try, Catherine laughs. You thought it was hokey. You called it tacky. Catherine struggles to make air quotes with the knife in her hand. You tried to convince me to pick something else. As I recall, anything else. Now, tell me, what song did we dance to? There's no response. Catherine hums the opening. Still nothing. And then A pause. A thrust. An answer. Roy Orbison. You got it. That's right. She begins humming the next verse. It grows louder and more animated until she suddenly stops to ask, "Will you sign these papers?" Jacob can't grip the pen. She tries to force it into his hands. Blue ink splashes into the red puddle at his side. "Do I have to do everything?" Jacob doesn't answer, so she stabs him again. "You already do so much. Please, don't leave. I need you. I'd be lost without you." Catherine leans in closer, another swift slice through the stomach to match the pair on his chest. Each cut elicits a new compliment. "You're stronger than I remember. Strong and beautiful." She twists the knife into his side, and his entire torso begins to shake. Slowly at first, and then furiously, until he falls forward. In a jolt of panic and excitement, Catherine stabs him 5 more times in the back. Catherine inches across the room, staring at the motionless lump that took her for granted. No more arguments, no more compliments. From what she can tell, no more breathing. She gathers the divorce papers in her hand. The knife is still firmly gripped in her right. Looks like I won't need that divorce after all. As Catherine jumps to conclusions, Jacob jumps back to his feet. His eyes open and close rapidly, asymmetrically. Soft teeth chatter and with the force of a predator's jaw. His body rumbles and shakes while his legs stay completely still. There's another rush of air, but this time it's not coming from any tea kettles. It blares like the horns on naval ships. In a matter of seconds, every single cut is trembling independently. The edges curl, the bleeding stops, the gasping ceases. His skin quivers, and something emerges from his wounds. Wet, black, and pulsating. They almost look like mouths. Are those mouths? One look from you and I drift away. I pray that you are here to stay. It's grotesque, otherworldly. They flap and flutter and leak, and Catherine doesn't skip a beat. The shining knife is her microphone. The wet floor is her stage. She hits her lines with the poise and aplomb of Mr. Orbison himself. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. 8 sets of leathery lips harmonize to finish the course. Anything at all, you got it, baby. Catherine is delighted, blowing kisses at every cracked, quivering orifice. She sways to their trembling lyrics, every stanza encapsulating the relationship she feels she was promised. I live my life to be with you. No one can do the things you do. Catherine turns off the lights. She doesn't need them anymore. She's beaming. How long has it been? We used to sing together all the time before we got married, Jacob. She struts across the dining room and slides through the hallway. She even does a snow angel on the kitchen floor, swaying in the heat, dancing in the dark, and singing at the top of her lungs. By the time the cops arrive, she's on her 5th run-through, dripping in her husband's blood, smiling ear to ear like a newlywed. I'm glad to give my love to you. I know you feel the way I do. Anything you want. The young officer raises his gun. Jacob is limp and lifeless on the kitchen floor. Catherine is lively and laughing in the foyer. Sirens light up her face through the windows. When you look past the fluids in her matted hair, you can tell she's happy. Red eyes gleam with wild satisfaction. Ma'am, Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to drop that knife. Catherine agrees and sings along with the sunken choir. You got it. Thank you, brave listeners, for joining me on another dark story. I urge my listeners to go out and find more content by our weekly author, if you're not too timid. If you enjoyed today's story and you've tuned in on YouTube, please click the like button. And if you don't want to miss future stories, click the old subscribe button. If you were present today on Spotify and enjoyed the story, you're more than welcome to leave a comment. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave the show a rating as you see fit. All these little things add up. And wherever you listen, please do me a favor and share the story if you can. Then tune in next week for another frightening tale, if you're brave enough.